Everyone, Radko Tutor here explaining. In this video, we are going to look at chapter 3 of a research proposal. So you know that research proposal and research report vary across universities and colleges, but I'm going to pick the many captions that can be found in a standard research proposal writing or a research report writing. So we are dealing with chapter 3, and now we would want to see the captions that are involved in chapter 3 or that are found in chapter 3. Now, before we even go to the captions that are found in chapter 3, let's start by defining what research methodology is all about. So a research methodology is the approach or the process that you will use to conduct research. So that approach that you are going to use to conduct research is what we are calling as research methodology. All right, or in elementary English I can say it is how you are going to correct and analyze data to answer your research question. So how you are going to correct and analyze data to answer the research question at hand is what we are calling as the research methodology. So we are looking at all the methods and the procedures, the process that you are going to use in order for you to correct and analyze data for you to answer the research topic you have. That is what we are calling as research methodology. So it is coming from the word methods. So all the methods you are going to use, all the approaches you are going to use in order for you to, correct data and then analyze that data you've corrected to help you answer the research question you have. That is what we call as research methodology. Now, having given that foundation, allow me to show you the captions that are found in research methodology, which is chapter 3 of any research proposal writing. So here are some of the captions that are found in or under chapter 3. Now, as you can see, we have our first one here, which is introduction. So just like I stated earlier on in the other videos that I explained on chapter 1, chapter 2, I said that in any chapter that you write of a research proposal, you should always have an introduction or an overview. So that introduction is always there to help you understand what is going to be found inside that chapter. So for instance, in this case, if we are to come up with an introduction, we can say that in this chapter, the researcher will answer or the researcher will describe the research design, the study location, target population, sampling procedure, research instruments, validity, data analysis, and so on and so forth. So meaning that you are giving an overview of what is going to be found inside the chapter. So no wonder in any research writing, you are supposed to have an introduction to just give a brief, overview of what is going to be found in that particular chapter. Now, after you've written your introduction, you need to go to the research design. So research design here is simply just the coherent or the logical order that you take as you are conducting your research. Okay, so as you are conducting the research, there is that order that you take for you to be able to carry out the research very well. So for instance, let me give you an example here. Let's say you want to you are collecting data and you are analyzing the same data. What do you think you are supposed to start with as a researcher? You are going to start with correcting data because you cannot analyze data that you don't have. So you start by correcting data. That's when you analyze the same data. So that order that you take, the overall order, in other words, the overall order or the overall logical order or the coherent order that you take as you are conducting your research, that is what we call as the research design. So for instance, you know that there is what we call as collecting of data, organizing data, summarizing data, presenting data. We also have, data conclusion, and then you make some analysis. So those things I've mentioned, you are supposed to make sure that you put them or conduct them in an orderly manner. So that overall order that you take as you conduct your study is what we call as the research design. Now, For instance, if we have these words, so let me do this. We know that if we are conducting the research, you should start by correcting data. So you start by correcting data. Okay, let me write from here. So you start by correcting data. So you correct data. After correcting data, you know that you are supposed to do what? You are supposed to organize this data. You organize the data. After organizing the data, what you're supposed to do, you make a summary. Okay, you summarize that data. After summarizing that, what you're supposed to do, you present it on maybe graphs, pie charts, bar charts, and so on and so forth. So you present the data. So you need to present that data. After presenting, maybe you can now start analyzing the data. So you can analyze the data. After analyzing the data, you can now maybe draw some conclusions. You draw conclusions from that data that you've analyzed. After drawing some conclusions, then now you make some reasonable decisions on the basis of such analysis. All right, so meaning that we are saying research design is the overall, that overall order that you take as you are conducting your research. That is what we call the research design. So for instance, you cannot just come and say, no, without you correcting data, or maybe after you just correct data, then you go to analysis. No, you can't do things like that. Why? Because you need to first organize that data, you need to summarize it, you need to present it. That's when you can do what? You can analyze. So you need to take that order. So that overall order that you are taking as you are conducting your research is what we call as the research design. As simple as that. Now, we go to what we call the study population. What is the study population? So, study population is simply I'm going to give an example before I even describe what study population is. I'm going to give you an example. So to give you an example, I'm going to provide a research topic. So by providing a research topic, let me say my research topic is about or is talking about an investigation on the level of pesticide residue content among locally produced fruits and vegetables in Chongwe district. All right, that, or maybe let me even bring a bit simpler topic so that we can easily understand. So let's say if my research topic is looking at an investigation on why learners fail mathematics at grade 12 level, why most of the learners fail mathematics at grade 12 level. If that is my topic, then my study population, we are looking at the area, where we are conducting the research from. Okay, that is my study population. So it's sometimes called study population or study location. So for instance, if you are conducting your research in Chongwe district, then your study population becomes the Chongwe district. Okay, so the study population consists of all the areas, or in other words, consists of the district or the proximity where you are conducting your research from. So it is consisting of all the proximities where you are conducting your research from. That is the study population, and mostly we do mention the district. So if you are conducting your research in Chongwe, you can say that the study population of this study or of this research will be Chongwe district of Lusaka province, Zambia. That is how you write the study population, or that's what we mean by saying study population. All right, so there is what we call study population and target population. So what is the difference between the two? We are saying that study population is the area where you are conducting the research from. So this is like the whole area where you're conducting the research from. Then the target population now, look at this. If you are looking at investigating some of the factors why most of the learners fail mathematics at grade 12 level, then let's say you are conducting this research in Chongwe district. So it doesn't mean that you go out there in all the schools in Chongwe district to correct data. No. What are you going to do then? What you are going to do is you only pick maybe 3 schools. So maybe you can only pick 3 schools. So you only pick maybe 3 schools And those 3 schools are the ones that will be a representative of the whole Chongwe district, which is your study population. Okay, so the 3 schools that we've picked in Chongwe district are the ones that will act as the target population. Yes, your study population is Chongwe district, but now your target population, it's not that you pick all the schools in Chongwe district, but you only choose 3 schools. So those 3 schools that you are picking, in order for them to represent the whole population of Chongwe district, that becomes your target population. I hope that's okay. So we are saying the target population is what we are only choosing to represent the whole district, while the whole district is the study population. Okay, so that is the best way you can understand it. So Chongwe district represents the study population. Then the 3 schools that we've chosen from Chongwe district are the ones that we are calling as the target population. All right, which are where you are actually basing your study on. Yes, your research is about Chongwe district, but are you going to manage asking every school which is found in Chongwe district? No. That's the reason why, as a researcher, you need to have a target population that will represent the whole district, which is the study population. All right. Having given some good definition or analysis on the target population, let's move on to sampling procedure and sample size. Now, what is, I'll start by defining what a sample is. So what is a sample? So a sample, in this case, a sample is defined as a representative of a whole. A representative of a whole. For instance, if you come to me and say, Boniface, the radical tutor, we've heard your work, but now we want to believe, we want to buy some videos from you, or maybe we want you to teach our learners at a certain school. What then are you going to do? What you're going to do is you ask for my work that I do. So what I would do myself is that I know that I have a lot of videos on YouTube, on Facebook, and other platforms. So what I would do is I will not, present to you all the videos that I've made, starting from the time I got involved in teaching. No. I will just get maybe 1 video or 2 videos or 3 videos that I'll show you. And those videos will be the representative of all the videos that I've been making. And thereafter, you'll be able to make some conclusions to say Boniface is good at teaching mathematics or is not good, because the 3 videos that I'll pick will represent all the videos that I've been making. So that is what we call as a sample. A sample is the representative of the whole population. So if you are picking something to represent the whole population, then that becomes a sample. Another example, let's say you are conducting your research in Lusaka province or Lusaka district. What you do is that you are looking at why learners fail science at grade 12 level. So what we are going to do is that you are not going to, pick all the schools in Lusaka district to determine why learners fail science at grade 12 level. What you do is you only pick maybe 2 schools or 3 schools. Those 3 schools, if you are to ask them questions and they give you answers, meaning that those 3 schools are representing all the schools in Lusaka district. And then they become what? The sample. So sample, in simple terms, we are saying that it is the representative of the whole population. So sample is simply the representative of the whole population. Then, when we say sample size now, we are looking at how much are you collecting, how much sample are you getting. If you are looking at it in terms of learners, how many learners are you picking from maybe the 3 schools that you've chosen as your target population? Are you picking 30 from each school? Are you picking 10 from each school? Are you picking 20 from each school? So if you are dealing with 3 schools as your target population, then maybe from each schools you are picking 20, 20, 20, 20. That means 60 will be your sample size. So that is your sample size. Then we now come to sampling procedure. What is this sampling procedure? Now, when we talk about sampling procedure, we are simply talking about the procedure or the process that you are going to use in order for you to collect this sample. So the process of obtaining a sample is what we are calling as the sampling procedure. So how are you going to collect this sample? That process that you use to collect sample is what you are calling as the sampling procedure. All right. From there on, we are going to look at what we call as the research instruments. Now, what are these research instruments? Research instruments are simply the tools that the researcher uses to collect data. So the tools that you use to collect data are the ones that we call as research instruments. Imagine you are a researcher. You can't just go maybe at a STEM school to collect data empty-handed. No, you can't do that. You need to get some tools that will help you in order for you to collect this data. So those tools that you use as you collect data, they are the ones that we call as research instruments. So examples of these tools are, number one, we can talk about questionnaires. So we have the questionnaires, we have the focus group discussions, we have the questionnaires, focus group discussions, we have the interviews, we have the history, we have so many research instruments that we have as we conduct research. So meaning that these questionnaires, the focus group discussion, the interviews, the history that we are going to use, all these collectively are called the research instruments. So questionnaires are list of questions that you have, list of questions that you carry as you go out there to conduct your research. They are called questionnaires. So for instance, you can come up with a questionnaire to say, if learners, you've seen that learners are failing in mathematics, then you can come up with a question to say, how is the relationship between the learners and the teachers, or the teacher who teaches mathematics? So that is a questionnaire. A questionnaire is just a question written somewhere that you ask your respondents, okay, as you correct the research, or as you correct the data. Okay, so that is what we call as the questionnaire. So questionnaires are just the questions that you write somewhere, maybe on a piece of paper, that you are going to ask your respondents as you be conducting your research. So we have focus group discussion, where you'll be just discussing with these respondents. You are discussing and trying to find out why certain things are occurring or are happening in that particular manner. Interviews. This is where you get to interview the respondents and see, maybe you're interviewing them one by one and see, or maybe get answers to your research question or topic. Then you have history. History, this is where you just get to, learn why things are happening based on history. Okay, you can listen to something and then you'll be able to come up with conclusions, valid conclusions, and say maybe learners are failing because of this particular history that happened, or which is in line with these learners. Then we have what we call as observations. Observations are research instruments, or a type of research instruments where you need to go out there and observe yourself as to why certain things are happening in that particular order. All right, So that's what we mean by research instruments. So research instruments are simply just the tools that you are going to use in order for you to collect data. Those tools are the ones that we call as the research instruments. Now, after you've learned about research instruments, we then need to know what we call as validity and reliability of research instruments. So what is this validity and reliability? Remember, we've already known what research instruments are. We are saying that these are the tools that you use as a researcher to collect data. So these are the research instruments. Now, how can you know that the research instruments that you are using are valid and reliable? Valid meaning that how do you know that these research instruments will not disappoint me? They are true, okay? They will give me proper answers. They will give me reliable answers. How do you know that these research instruments, the questionnaires, the focus group discussions, the interviews, the history, the observations will give you valid and correct answers? Okay, so that is what we call validity and reliability of research instruments. Now, what do you do as a researcher for you, or what then are you supposed to do as a researcher for you to make sure that your research instruments are valid and reliable? So for you to know that my research instruments are valid and reliable, you should always make sure that you get to present your research instruments to your supervisor. So your supervisor should first go through the research instruments before you go out there to distribute them. So for instance, if there are some questionnaires which are not okay, the research supervisor will be there to say, remove these and add these. So by doing so, you'll be able to know to say, my research instruments are valid and reliable. Sometimes we also use what we call as piloting or pilot study. So for you to know that your research instruments are giving you proper answers and they are reliable, what you can simply do is to carry out what we call as pilot study. So a pilot study is simply a study that you do prior to the main study. So the study that you do prior to the main study is what we call the pilot study. So for instance, if your research is if your main research is taking place in a Copper Belt province, what you do is you can carry out a pilot study maybe from Lusaka, okay, or maybe from Central Province, where you get to question or maybe present your research instruments to a certain small group of people that will answer those questions. Then after you've done that, you now go and present the same questions or the same research instruments to your actual or your target population, which is the Copper Belt province. Then if you see that the answers that you are getting from Copper Belt province are exactly the same answers that you are getting from your pilot study, then you as a researcher, you are going to conclude that my research instruments are valid and reliable. But if you see that the answers that you got from the pilot study are totally different from the ones you are getting from your target population, then you conclude to say the research instruments are not reliable. All right, so that is what we call as validity and reliability of research instruments. Then we need to go to, we need to make a transition to data analysis. Now, what is this data analysis? Okay, data analysis is the way on how the researcher analyzes data. How are you going to analyze that? After you've, remember we've looked at how you collect the data, how you are going to present your data, how you are going to summarize your data, how you are going to present it, and then you make an analysis of that data that you collected. Now, how do you analyze the data? To analyze data, meaning you would want now to see what you've collected. Okay, you are now trying to come up with some conclusions. You are trying to make. So you're trying to make some reasonable decisions on the basis of the data that you've collected. So the decision that you are making based on the data you've collected is what we are calling as the data analysis. So for instance, after you've collected, let's say for instance, you asked a learner who has been failing grade 12, and then you ask them, what makes you to fail grade 12? And then they tell you to say, I fail grade 12 because we don't have proper materials to use at our school. Okay, we don't have proper materials to use at our school. So from there, as a researcher, you can be able to make, reasonable decision and conclusion to say, these learners are failing because they lack materials to use in schools. So that which you are making is what we are calling as the analysis, which is data analysis. Now, data is in two ways, or data collected is in two ways. We have what we call as the qualitative data and the quantitative data. So you have the qualitative data and the quantitative data. So the qualitative and the quantitative. So when you hear the word qualitative, meaning you are dealing with data which is non-numerical, okay? Data that does not involve numbers. And then whenever you hear the word quantitative meaning that you are dealing with data which is statistical, or data which is involving numbers, or data which is numerical. That is the word quantitative. So now, these two types of data collected are analyzed in two different ways. So data which is qualitative, so if you are dealing with data which is qualitative, this data which is qualitative, mostly in research, it is analyzed thematically. All right, like that. So this data is analyzed thematically. So what do we mean by thematically? So to analyze data thematically, meaning that you're analyzing the data based on what you've seen using your logical thinking, and then you come up with some reasonable decisions or conclusions based on what you've seen. So once you do that, meaning that you are analyzing data thematically. So meaning if you've seen, for instance, that most of the learners are not attending classes and you see that they are failing at the end of the day, then what are you going to analyze or think as a researcher? You are going to say that learners are failing this particular subject because they do not attend classes. So you are using your reasoning or your head to think that, or to make a conclusion that learners are failing because they don't attend classes. That is how we analyze what? Data which is not numerical. Okay, then how do you analyze data which is numerical? Data which involves numbers. So the data which involves numbers, mostly we use statistical methods to analyze it. So for instance, you can use Excel to analyze this data. Okay, you can use a lot of statistical methods, like you can use standard deviations, the mean, the tables to analyze this data which is quantitative. You can use maybe testing hypothesis. You can use a lot of methods that are statistical in nature for you to be able to analyze data which is quantitative. So that is how you can analyze data which is quantitative. All right, then from there now we go on to ethical considerations. So what are these ethical considerations? So ethical considerations are simply the good things that you are supposed to do as a researcher as you conduct your research. So good things that you do as a researcher as you conduct your research are called ethical considerations. Now, look at this. When I say ethical considerations, I mean those good things that you do as you go out there as a researcher, as you be collecting your data. For instance, you as a researcher, you cannot go out there. Let's say, for instance, you are conducting your research at school A. So as you are conducting your research at school A, you can't just go direct in class and then you start asking questions. You start asking learners questions. No, you can't do that. You can first go to the higher authority, okay? You follow the head teacher, or maybe anyone who is holding powers at that particular time, you ask them permission, or you ask permission from them. No, I want to conduct research here. I've come as a researcher from this particular college or university, and I've come here to, interact with your learners. And then after they have allowed you, that's when now you go in class to, ask or maybe present yourself to the learners. So you can't just go out there and start asking questions without you given permission. No, you can't do that. So once you do that, you'll be considered as a bad researcher, meaning that you are not following these things that we are calling as what? The ethical considerations. Another ethical consideration that you can follow is actually the issue of you being honest. So I've seen most of the times researchers nowadays are not honest, because you'd find that somebody's just giving his report, his research to somebody else to write for them, maybe, and that person they are giving, he or she is using ChatGPT, is using some AI tools to write for them this research in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. The research is done and they present the research to the supervisor. Supervisor also doesn't go through. The research is done and somebody has graduated. So as a researcher, once you do those things, just know that you are not ethical upright. You are not following what we call as the ethical considerations in research. Okay, so there are so many ethical considerations that you are supposed to follow as a researcher, but for now, we can end there. So each and every research that you have should have what we call as the chapter summary. So the chapter summary is always there to summarize whatever that you've said inside your chapter. So talk about whatever that you've summarized, whatever that you've talked inside in the chapter summary. And mostly it is just one paragraph. So it is just one paragraph like that. That's what we do on the chapter summary. So please, as you write chapter 3, which we call as the research methodology, make sure that you observe the order and these captions that are found under chapter 3. Otherwise, for today, I wish you nothing but all the best in your academic writings, in your research writing, and everything that you do academically. May God protect you all. This is the Radical Tutor, but please don't forget to follow my page. If you are on YouTube, kindly subscribe so that at least if I post some videos, you are able to see that I have posted the videos and you are able to follow me in that regard. See you next time. Bye-bye.